What if I told you that there was an NHL player who physically couldn't seem to stay on his feet when he scored? From end-to-end rushes to his iconic, impossible-to-replicate flying goal, Bobby Orr was truly one of the greatest defensemen in NHL history, and his highlights are honestly some of the best on YouTube. But how did he develop this unique skating ability that helped him win 2 Stanley Cups? And why did he deliberately play defense in a way that no one had ever seen before? Before we dive into how this high school kid from a tiny town became the greatest defenseman ever, take a second to smash that subscribe button and ring that bell. Trust me, this story is insane. Well, to find out, we have to go back to 1960. A scrawny 12-year-old Bobby Orr was playing against kids twice his size in Parry Sound, Ontario, a tiny lumber town of just 6,000 people. But how did this small-town kid, whose dad worked as a fruit delivery man and had to fix Bobby's first pair of skates with tape, end up getting signed by the Boston Bruins at just age 14? You see, Bobby was different from the very start. While most kids his age were just learning to skate backwards, 5-year-old Bobby was already practicing figure-8 patterns on a frozen river behind his house for hours. His dad had flooded their backyard to make a tiny rink, and Bobby would spend every minute after school there, even eating his dinner and skates. I'd be out there from the time I got home from school until my mother would flash the porch light to tell me it was bedtime, Bobby once said. But it wasn't just endless practice that made Bobby special. At age 8, he joined his first organized team, and his coach discovered something unusual. Bobby could skate faster backwards than most kids could skate forward. He also had this weird habit of carrying the puck while skating full speed, something defensemen just didn't do back then. Defensemen were supposed to stay back and protect their goal, but Bobby couldn't help himself. He'd grab the puck and rush up the ice like a forward. Word about this unusual kid spread quickly through Ontario's hockey circles. In one game, Bobby scored 7 goals as a defenseman. Scouts couldn't believe what they were seeing. A kid who could skate like a figure skater, hit like a tank, and score like a star forward, all while playing defense. Then came the moment that changed everything. Ren Blair, a scout for the Boston Bruins, made the long drive to Parry Sound after hearing rumors about this wonder kid. He watched in amazement as 14-year-old Bobby controlled entire games against 18-year-olds. Blair didn't even wait for the game to end. He called the Bruins right from the rink's payphone. "I've just seen something special," he told them. "We need to sign this kid right now." But Bobby's parents were worried. Many hockey parents at that time were selling their young sons' rights to NHL teams for quick money. Would Bobby become just another young talent lost in the system? The Bruins had a plan for Bobby that had never been tried before. Instead of pulling him straight into professional hockey, they sent him to play junior hockey with the Oshawa Generals. But they did something special. They paid for Bobby's entire family to move to Oshawa with him. His parents didn't have to work anymore. Their only job was to keep Bobby focused on hockey. In Oshawa, Bobby's unique training kicked into high gear. Every morning at 6 a.m. before anyone else showed up at the rink, Bobby would practice what he called his edge work. He'd spend hours just working on his skating, crossing over, pivoting, and switching directions at full speed. The secret was in the ankles, Bobby would say. While other players were working on shooting, I was teaching my ankles to bend in ways they weren't supposed to. But it wasn't all smooth skating. In his first game with the Generals, 14-year-old Bobby faced players who were 20 years old and much bigger. One veteran player decided to welcome Bobby by crushing him into the boards. But instead of staying down, Bobby got up, skated straight back at the guy, and knocked him flat on his back. The whole arena went silent. No one had ever seen a 14-year-old stand up to a grown man like that. Bobby's coach in Oshawa, Bep Guadelin, saw something nobody else did. While other coaches were yelling at Bobby to stay back on defense, Bep told him the opposite. "You see the ice differently, kid. Don't let anyone tell you how to play." Bep would set up these crazy drills where Bobby had to carry the puck through the entire team while skating backwards. If he lost the puck, he had to do 50 push-ups. The results were incredible. In his first season, Bobby scored 72 points as a defenseman. Teams started changing their entire game plans just to stop him. They'd assign 2 players to follow him around the ice, but Bobby would still find ways to score. One night, frustrated opponents tried to trap him behind his own net. Bobby calmly skated figure eights until they got tired, then rushed up the ice and scored. But success came with a price. All those hits and crashes were taking a toll on Bobby's knees. By age 16, he needed his first knee operation. The doctors found something worrying. Bobby's knees weren't built for the way he played. They warned him that his aggressive style might shorten his career. But Bobby had one response: "That's the only way I know how to play." Despite the knee problems, Bobby led Oshawa to an incredible 48-game unbeaten streak. NHL scouts were now calling him the next great one. Even though he was still too young to drive a car, the hockey world was about to see something it had never seen before. On October 19, 1966, 18-year-old Bobby Orr stepped onto the ice for his first NHL game with the Boston Bruins. The team was struggling badly. They hadn't won a championship in 25 years. But in his very first game, Bobby did something that made people's jaws drop. He stole the puck from a Detroit Red Wings player, skated through their entire team, and scored. The crowd went crazy. One reporter wrote, "I just saw a teenager make 5 professional hockey players look like they were standing still." Bobby's rookie contract was $25,000, the price of a small house at the time. But he made that look like a bargain. In his first game at Madison Square Garden, the New York fans cheered for Bobby instead of their own team. He'd make incredible plays, faking out 3 players at once, spinning and turning like a figure skater with perfect balance. His first season was so amazing that the Bruins doubled his salary without him even asking. By his third season, Bobby wasn't just changing games, he was changing hockey itself. Teams had to develop new defensive strategies just to deal with him. The Montreal Canadiens, the best team at the time, tried something never seen before. They assigned 2 players to follow Bobby everywhere, even when he didn't have the puck. It didn't work. In one game against Montreal, Bobby scored 3 goals and had 4 assists while being double-teamed the entire game. In 1969, Bobby set a record that seemed impossible: 120 points in a season as a defenseman. Defensemen usually scored only 20 to 30 points. But Bobby wasn't just scoring. He was also the best defensive player in the league. In one game, he blocked 10 shots, had 4 takeaways, scored 2 goals, and made 3 assists. The opposing coach said after the game, "It's like watching Superman play hockey." Then came the 1970 season, Bobby's masterpiece. The Bruins were unstoppable. Bobby was scoring almost 2 points every game while playing with knees so bad that doctors wanted him to quit. In the playoffs, he took things to another level. Against the Chicago Blackhawks, he played 60 minutes straight without taking a break, something that seems impossible today. In the finals against St. Louis, Bobby created the goal, the most famous moment in hockey history. He passed the puck to Derek Sanderson, then sprinted toward the net. Sanderson passed it back, and Bobby shot while flying through the air, scoring and getting tripped, creating that iconic photo of him flying like Superman. The moment was so perfect that photographers named it the goal of the century.
In the corner to Sanderson, back in front to Orr, shot, scores! Bobby Orr!
But his knees were getting worse. By 1971, Bobby couldn't even tie his own skates because bending down hurt too much. His teammates would have to tie them for him. Doctors drained cups of fluid from his knees before every game. One doctor told him, "Your knees look like they belong to a 70-year-old man." In 1975, Bobby signed a huge contract with Chicago, $3 million for 5 years. But here's the sad part. He only played 26 games for them. His knees were so bad that he'd wake up at 4 a.m. to spend 3 hours just getting them loose enough to skate. By his last season, he couldn't even sleep because of the pain. But he kept playing until he literally couldn't stand up after games. When he retired in 1978 at age 30, the numbers were staggering. 915 points in 657 games, 8 straight years as the best defenseman, 3 MVP awards, 2 Stanley Cups, and countless records that still stand today. But maybe the most incredible stat is this: In the 657 games he played, the Bruins won 445 of them. Before Bobby, they were the worst team in hockey. With him, they became nearly unbeatable. The end of his career wasn't what he deserved. His last game wasn't even a real game. It was a quiet practice where he tried one more time to skate and couldn't. Phil Esposito, his teammate, said something that sums it up perfectly. "We never saw the real Bobby Orr. What we saw was maybe 50% of what he could have been. And even at 50%, he was the best player who ever lived." There's also something special about how Bobby played the game. Today, players are taught to be careful, to not take risks. But Bobby played like every shift might be his last. Even when his knees were killing him, he'd still try those end-to-end rushes. He never changed his style, even though playing safer might have saved his career. As he once said, "If you're going to play the game, you might as well play it right." Think about this. Bobby only played 657 games. That's about 8 full seasons. Most hockey legends play twice that long, but in those 657 games, he changed hockey forever. Sometimes the biggest impacts come from the shortest careers. By the way, if you've enjoyed this incredible story of Bobby Orr, smash that like button right now and let's hit 1,000 likes for the greatest defenseman ever. Was Bobby Orr the greatest hockey player of all time, even with such a short career? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Does he deserve to be called the GOAT over Wayne Gretzky? I read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because in our next videos, we're diving into another hockey legend who changed the sport forever, from nothing to becoming a Stanley Cup champion.